hope you want to hear about supply chain, how to manage supply chain pressures. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what this panel has formed for. So who's in our audience? How many of you are franchisors? Put your hand up if you're a franchisor, and keep it up if you've been in business for more than 5 years. As a franchisor, more than 5 years. Okay. And then how many of you are suppliers? If you're not a franchisor, probably a supplier. Kind of both, franchisor and supplier. Okay, a couple of you. And then who else? Franchisee? If you didn't put your hand up, else? Franchisee? Yeah. Wonderful. Great. Good for you. Any other franchisee here? Okay. My name is John Hayes. I am the founding director of the Titus Center for Franchising. Bit unique in that we offer, I think the only university in the world, we offer a concentration in franchising, which is not a major or a minor. A concentration is third step down from a major. So our students get 12 credit hours of franchise education, and when they leave us, generally they want to buy a franchise because this is the Gen Z population. They want to be franchise owners. This is our 7th year at Palm Beach Atlantic University. We have graduated 51 in that period of time. 9 of them are franchisees today. They're all in service businesses. About 20 of them work for franchisors. 1 or 2 work for suppliers. So they get a franchise education. They find out what franchising is. No one knows what franchising is when they arrive on the campus. They don't. We did this year have a son of a franchisor, 2 sons of franchisors, who arrived on campus specifically to study franchising. So that has happened, but generally these students come to study marketing, management, finance, accounting, international business, and they discover that there's this center for franchising where they can use their elective hours and really put them to good use. And that concentration in franchising leverages their degree and their opportunity to be able to do what they want to do, which mostly they're going to go to work at first, but 9 of them right out, even before, I have 2 students now, currently students, who are also franchisees, and that's not unusual. But generally they graduate and then they decide after a couple of years working that they're going to invest in a franchise. So we continue to do that. South Florida, we have an advisory board that when we started we thought, well, we'll have 8 to 10 people who will contribute a little bit of money every year to help us with our operating costs. We just sent a news release out this week. We have 101 individuals today on our advisory board. People love supporting franchise education, which is great for us, and people love meeting these students to find out where'd you come from and why franchising and where you're going to go when you graduate. My students get 2 to 3 offers in their senior year. So they have to do an internship. That's generally, they end up with that company hiring them full-time. This is an opportunity to hire somebody who actually knows something about franchising. I would say my graduates know more about franchising than the majority of first-year franchisees would know about franchising. They know all about FDDs. They know about topics that are being discussed here. They know about that already at the time of graduation, so they don't have to find it accidentally. 2 of my students are here somewhere, not in this room, somewhere. Lane and Brad have been on my advisory board for a number of years and very graciously pay all expenses for 2 of my students to come and spend the 3 days at Springboard for the last several years, so it's been a great advantage. Love doing that. So our panel, Jesse Kaiser is to my right and to your left, sorta. Graduated from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. In college, joined a small technology startup, stayed with them for a while, and then his career takes a very interesting turn, a Valpak franchisee. And then he and his brother opened Sports Clip haircuts. They currently own 27 of those. And then they purchased OxyFresh carpet cleaning of St. Louis. and they operate 6 territories. And he and his partners are opening locations of Ideal Image, member of my advisory board, across the country. Jesse's has served on advisory councils for Little Caesars. I missed that one. OxyFresh Carpet Cleaning. Currently serves as chair of the Franchise Updates 2024 Multi-Unit Franchise Conference. So Jesse's going to have some great information to share with us. Stephen Smith down on the end. Stephen was a college bodybuilding champion, and what do you do when you're a college bodybuilding champion? You go on and open fitness centers. And today he's with HOTWORX, 24-hour infrared fitness studios. He has been in business for 35 years and faces supply chain issues like everyone else that we can get his expertise. And to my left, to your right, the number 1 position is Ed Kelley, and the past 3 years have been educational for Ed. He says he's run 2 entirely different restaurant concepts, and you can imagine how supply chain impacts the restaurant business. And he's going to tell us about the issues that he has faced and more about his businesses. And then next to me, to my left, is Chris Birkinshaw, Chief Executive Officer of Aloha Poke Company, fast casual restaurant chain, franchisor headquartered in Chicago. Aloha Poke and its franchise operate 18 locations, 7 major metro areas, 5 new locations currently under construction, and 15 additional under contract. So we want to get right to the issues, and you get the expertise of this group. Lots of knowledge sitting up here, and I think that we can help you best by getting to the questions that are pertinent to this topic of supply chain. We're going to start doing that a little differently than the way we normally do it. What burning question do you have? What you came here, obviously you came here for a purpose. There aren't very many of you. So this is something that you must have come here because you need supply chain answers, help, assistance, direction, guidance, whatever it is this group might be able to give you. So who wants to start us off with the first question for supply chain? Go ahead.
When will the problems get better?
When will the problems get better in the supply chain world? Okay, I think that's something for each of these gentlemen to answer. So let's start with HOTWORX.
Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. Well, it was awful a couple of years ago, and but we miraculously were able to get goods and never be out of goods, the main ones that our franchisees wanted. And we did so, and we continue this process. I have an accounting meeting every day, Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock. We talk about cash flow first, and then we talk about supply chain management. We talk about inventory. We talk about levels of inventory. I have a VP of handling logistics and all of the goods coming in, and we do manufacture overseas. We have all different types of products, equipment, et cetera, coming in. We're opening about 20 new stores every month, so we have all kinds of goods going to our franchisees. But I would say the best advice I could give in managing supply chain is to meet with accounting every damn day and watch your inventory levels like a hawk. Keep an eye on AR, AP, get a ratio that works for you, and just watch it like a hawk. That's probably my best advice.
Great. Jesse, what do you think about when's it going to be over?
I think things you can buy, it's over. I think you're going to be able to get anything you pretty much want to buy. But the supply chain that I think everyone in this room is feeling constraints on is the workforce. So people you can hire, right? I have always ran with the philosophy that if there was a breakdown in your system, your organization, and it was between 2 people, it was always one of the 3 C's. The person, either the leader or the employee, lacked the correct communication skills, the correct commitment to do the job, or the correct capabilities. I can tell you on the Sport Clip side, I've got a very finite resource of who I can hire. They have to be licensed. It's not something that most people will relocate for a new salon job. So I've got just a finite number of people I could hire in an area. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio where in the restaurant business, I could have 3 or 4 employees take care of several customers at that same time. In the carpet cleaning business and in the salon business, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if I don't have that employee, I can't have that customer. So I could tell you in 2019 that the trend was everyone was complaining there wasn't enough stylists to hire. There's plenty of stylists to hire. There's not enough stylists for every salon out there, but there's plenty of stylists to hire. So I have always been aggressive in recruiting. I haven't just put an ad up on Indeed or Craigslist and just hope someone would come into the store or apply online. I've gone out and actively looked for those people. I think moving forward, more companies are going to have to do that because bottom line is this. If you hire people that have higher capabilities, better communication, and more commitment, it kills everything. Like, it will crush all your competition because when they talked about culture trumps strategy, that culture is part of those 3 C's. You have to have those 3 things to have really good culture.
Very good. This is Ed next to me. Ed, I mixed you up before, so sorry about that.
That's right.
What do you say? When's it over? Is it over?
I think it's going to continue to reinvent itself. I think it's going to be searching for some better path. I mean, COVID just sort of was already a diminishing supply chain issue to start with. In my case, it was a very interesting time. I took over as CEO of a restaurant company in the Mid-Atlantic area on February 1st, and on March 17th, COVID was announced as official. And so you learn real quick, what's happening and what was not done correctly before I got there. And it was about relationships. The supplier relationships were very, at best, arm's length. There were, suppliers are, they respond like anybody else, to the people that they enjoy doing business with. We had not been particularly good to them, and it took a lot of groveling. But at the end of the day, in about 6 months, we put together an entire restaurant management system that allowed us to trace everything and integrate with the distributor and have an ability to change the menu on the fly. It was fast casual Italian, by the way. And change literally ingredients in our menus. It was all automated. Product mix. We were able to change a lot of things in a very short period of time. But now I would say to you, don't wait for the next COVID type event. Go back and re-examine your relationships with your suppliers and make sure that you have backups to those suppliers. I mean, at the end of the day, local suppliers are a nice thing to have anyway, because you're putting the money and the jobs back into the community. Some of them are not big enough to handle everything. For us, we had to use a major broadliner. But at the end of the day, it was relationships, and it was our ability to, in fact, what we used to do is once a week, the distributor would bring a truck full of our most urgently needed items and strategically park them somewhere in the DC area, and then all the restaurants managers would come in and go to that one truck and get everything that they needed for the next week, because the trucks weren't getting there. COVID shut down drivers, it shut down a lot of things.
Chris, you got comments on, is it over?
I agree with Jesse. In terms of things you can buy, in our experience, it largely is. The story of COVID wrecking the most inelastic elements of the supply chain, really for us hit in 2021. Packaging, produce, anything imported, shutdowns in Shanghai, container ships going back empty, inspectors getting onto those boats. But then the story in 2022 is stuff was there, it was just really expensive. And so 2023, I think broadly speaking for the limited service restaurant industry is about sort of regaining that margin back, because even as supply chain, some of the worst of the pressures have eased, it's not just COVID, it's failed harvests in California and Mexico. It's lack of farm worker availability. It's climate change, it's union activity, it's strikes, it's work stoppages, it's still transportation issues. So also agree with Ed. It's all about identifying that plan B and that plan C, while at the same time cultivating those relationships with your major suppliers to make sure you have both continuity of supply the quality that you're used to, that you want to deliver to your customers. And also, pricing that, at least in 2023, you find it normalizing is probably not coming back down once that genie's out of the bottle, it doesn't go back in. But just trying to look forward and forecast this as much as possible to de-risk it, because, it's not just a pandemic, it's not just, a giant lake in the, inland valley of California. It's going to be something else down the line. So it's all about just risk mitigation as much as possible, but thank God we're not in 2021 again where, we're trying to find fish or everybody's trying to find containers, and just we're seeing normalization.
Chris, one of the comments that you made in your notes to me when we were preparing for today, you said that the answer for the emerging franchisor, the answer to the supply chain dilemma, isn't just site selection, construction, operations, marketing support. It's access to technology. So how has that worked for you, and other members of the panel as well can comment on this, and what are you recommending, particularly for the emerging company?
Yeah, thanks. So we've seen, in particularly the supply chain pressures that occurred after COVID, access to technology and supply chain being both value proposition, but also competitive advantages in the franchise sales marketplace. And so we leaned in really well into this, and we found that unless you're some of the biggest QSR fast food chains in the world, if you're an emerging brand, you don't have the world's biggest ad budget. You're not sponsoring the Super Bowl. You're not you're not feeding a giant ad machine. So what are you offering? And 5 years ago, you weren't really talking about supply chain and technology very much, but it's tough for an independent operator, or a very small operator, to afford these systems, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's robust online ordering, loyalty tracking, gift card management, it could go on and on. So we saw this in terms of an advantage both in franchise sales, where on both ends of the spectrum. So we had new first-time buyers who were shopping, but our competitors, many of them would say, okay, the first thing you do after site selection is go find yourself a produce vendor. And that's not something very appetizing to someone who's purchasing a food franchise because they might be new to the industry and they want the support. But secondarily, we were able to attract some really, really robust multi-unit, multi-brand franchisees that are precious for an emerging concept, because they were experiencing existing supply chain issues, bad ones, with some pretty large regional chicken and Mexican concepts. I had one guy who was spending 3 hours a day round trip every single day to pick up chicken from a central facility. And so as you're an emerging concept and say, we've got this as locked down as much as possible, was really attractive for them in joining our system. And we put a lot of resources behind it. And the only asterisk I'd add to this is, we also want our franchisees, we don't want them, necessarily, it's good to have a plan B, but I don't want them going to Costco to buy food every day. And it's tough to put that genie back in the bottle too, once you've relaxed the supply chain. I have a couple of competitors, notably, if you look on their social feeds, all the food looks different in all their various locations. And as a brand person, that's terrible to me. But it's because they started letting their franchisees buy whatever cheapest thing they could find in the marketplace. And now they're having a hard time, again, reining that back in once the genie's out of the bottle. So it's something that's precious to us as a brand continuity focus, but also, as I see it, a value proposition for a franchisee where they're getting that level of white glove service from us because it's that important.
Jesse, how about technology from your point of view? What's happening?
Everything's online, right? So online check-in for haircuts, booking carpet cleaning online. Even with our Little Caesars, we initiated an online ordering and third-party delivery, and we saw the ticket averages go up in all of our things. Technology's here to stay. I'm happy to have it. Going back to a supply chain issue is, if you're thinking, and I'm going to hit home on the human resource and the supply chain shortage of workforce, but as a brand, what are you doing to help your franchisees hire the best people? Do you have a website dedicated for hiring where they can fill out an app and it gets directly sent to the the franchisee directly. One of my brands does that. It's amazing. My other brand doesn't, and it's totally up to us to figure that one out. So I think technology is an opportunity to bridge that hiring gap for your franchisees. And that's about it.
Anyone have a technology comment based on what you've heard so far? Question, comment, go ahead.
Jesse, could you speak to, obviously AI is kind of a buzzword, these days, and implementing this technology because it will relieve people from having to do this and having to do that. So can you speak to the caution of bringing this technology in, but leaders implement technology doesn't replace leadership?
Sure.
And how, that's something that I've been seeing with some emerging brands that I've got an app for that. So that means that I don't have to do anything because the app will take care of that. And leadership is what needs to be the story of this.
Well, I mean, I can give an example with our carpet cleaning concept, Charles, is that very quick, like years ago, they implemented an early form of AI into a chat bot so you could actually just book 24/7 online. There was a lot of engagement, but we tracked it, and it was less of a close rate than if they actually just picked up the phone and spoke to a real human. Does that mean that the technology was too soon? I don't think so. I think the way that the chatbot was set up wasn't welcoming enough or assuring enough for someone to actually to build that. So that's an example where for a while they said, hey, we got a chatbot, but then leadership stepped in and they said, well, is it really working for us? And they took it offline. They was like, it's detrimental. So I think they're going to bring it back very soon, but when they bring it back, it's going to be bigger and better. I'm personally using AI for all my recruitment ads. It's really been a game changer. So if you guys are posting ads on Indeed and you have multiple locations in a metropolitan area, if you didn't know that, if you've got the same brand name and the ad looks very similar to one another, Indeed will truncate them all. Now, you can hit a little plus sign and it'll open them all up, but the average user doesn't know that or see that. And I go back to thinking of the beer wars of the 80s when you had Bud Light, Bud Dry, Bud Ice, right? All those brands were just to take up as much of the real estate at the supermarket as possible. So you had to look at all the Anheuser-Busch before you even got to Miller. So with AI, I've been able to create unique, distinctive ads that still are brand specific, but very unique to break that algorithm with Indeed as an example. And that's allowed me to actually have every single ad in that market be my ad. And that's really helped out with hiring.
Great. So Ed, you have Paisanos, fast casual Italian. And the pandemic took you by great surprise like everyone else. But you say, whether one restaurant owner or a chain of 500, there are solutions to supply chain issues. And yet you had a situation where there wasn't any way, no technology, no systems for optimizing restaurant performance, knowing how they were performing. How'd you get through all that, and how did supply chain impact, and now where are you today?
Well, so I'm no longer, I finished that project about 6 months ago, but I'll tell you this, I don't think there's been a better time in franchising's history to be an emerging franchisor. Take aside all these supply chain issues, the things you have to do for labor, for food, for anything. You have a responsibility as an emerging franchisor. You're bringing in people that are trusting you with their money and their livelihood to give them the systems and tools they need to run whether it's restaurant or automotive, whatever it is, the systems are out there now. And you don't need to be a large chain. You can compete very effectively, but everything you're doing that's redundant comes back to haunt you. Everything the franchise operator does that's redundant comes back to hurt them. So what we did, and by the way, getting franchisee collaboration and unity through transparency is big, because when you go through crises, whether it's a supply chain crisis or any other thing, if you don't have that network of franchisees behind you, you're not going to get through things like supply chain issues, because they're all going to fall apart and go in their own direction, including what he's talking about, which is going to Costco, not even recognizing the food that your brand is serving. So my answer is that yes, we did have a tough time at Paisanos, but in about 6 months, we had a brand new system in every restaurant that controlled scheduling, overtime, thumbprint controls on where the labor hours would go, security tied to every check that was issued. We had integrated systems with our distributor, and it was all in 6 months. But if we hadn't done that, as things continued to deteriorate, we would have been in pretty rough shape. We're 95% off premise at $1.6 million average per unit. So that meant everything was going out of our restaurant to people in their homes or their businesses. And to do that logistically was very tough until we got the systems in place. But, you know, a lot of times it's just the basics. Treat your relationships with your suppliers well, treat your franchisees well, include them in whatever you want to do on an action plan, and take their suggestions seriously, not just, you know, to let in ear and then move on. And you get through it together.
Great. Who of the panelists are you part of a group purchasing organization or a purchasing collective? If so, how does that work? Where do you look for them? What do you recommend people do if they want to consider that?
We are not a part of any collective like that, largely because we manufacture most of what we sell or we design, and we hire manufacturers to do that. So we have a tight control over that. We have a very low royalty, and the reason we're able to do that, it's a flat royalty, $5.95 a month, is because we private label and we brand everything and control that, and we offer a very quality product to our franchisees, so we never have really any complaints about that. So for us, it's not something that we do.
Okay, Jesse?
You know, I don't participate in anything like that as a franchisee, but I did want to touch base with your competitor that was just letting their franchisees buy chicken anywhere and everywhere. A huge missed opportunity, and I could tell you my experience being on the advisory boards during the pandemic and everything like that. Sometimes our traditional suppliers just could not keep up with the demand for whatever reason it was. As an example, for a short amount of time, all the states were requiring a brand new cape to be put around you for your haircut, where there's not a state cosmetology board that requires that. So everyone needed hundreds of more capes. So we couldn't get them on brand, couldn't get them logoed, couldn't do anything like that. But what they had done is they had already figured out these are the places you can buy them. Here is the negotiated price for the non-logoed capes, as an example. So what they could have done with Costco is like, hey, we've got a specification on this chicken thigh. We want this much for this much a pound. And that'll service most of our locations. And for those that can't, here's the other two options that we have. It was a missed opportunity for them to provide that. I mean, as a Little Caesars franchisee, I paid a 6% royalty. I was happy paying that every week. Why? I saved 6%, same dollar amount, in my grocery bills because of their collective buying with their commissary. So I'm looking for those kind of things from a franchisor is you need to give me that same value one way or another. If it's directly from you, great. If it's not, I need you to facilitate where I can get that. So I don't have to think about that and I can worry about operations.
So Jesse, if Little Caesars wasn't a giant in the pizza industry and didn't have a commissary and couldn't save you anything,
Right.
because there's only 3 units out there, how would that have changed your mind, your opinion? What would you have done in that situation, maybe as the franchisor?
You know, that wasn't something I considered when I first signed my first franchise agreement with them at the age of 27, but I could tell you now, I don't walk into a franchise agreement with a new brand unless I can see where the value of the 6% is. And I'll give you an honest answer. I pay more for my chemicals with OxyFresh carpet cleaning than if I just went down the road and got it from a distributor. But I'm getting my royalties paid back in full because they've done an awesome job with online marketing and SEO. So it may not be the food that I can get the savings on, but there's got to be some value that you're creating where it's a wash at the very least, if not a benefit or a value add for that royalty. I never had a problem paying that royalty because I always thought I was getting a hell of a deal. And as long as your franchisees feel that way, you got a good relationship.
Great. Back to the co-op idea or purchasing group. Chris, I think you have that experience.
Yes, we are in the restaurant space. It is common, especially in the sort of mid-micro cap space, to join a group purchasing organization. There are a couple of big ones out there in the restaurant space. The value is obviously you get negotiated group pricing on a variety of products. You leverage the purchasing power of the co-op in terms of many of the commodities on market. They do a nice job of auditing your mainline distributor, making sure supplier contracts are actually flowing through to the invoices that your stores and your franchisees are actually paying. It's not a panacea though, and it's something where during the most broken times with the international supply chain, it was those direct relationships that we had with our most critical suppliers that got us through. 60% of what we buy, 65% of what we buy is fish and packaging. And so you have three products, three categories where there's a lot of risk exposure. There's also a lot of opportunity to make sure you get the right products back, quality for your customers, but you got to maintain price as well. And so where the group purchasing organizations are great is for your day-to-day quotidian needs, managing supplier contracts, your mainliner, all of that. But I wouldn't recommend letting them be that main relationship contact with your most critical suppliers. Our tuna supplier, we've purchased from them for a long time. It's the highest quality product. It comes from Faroe Islands. It's also not the least expensive on the marketplace. We've been relationship buyers for a long time. And for a period in 2021, you just could not find tuna in the continental U.S. It was all on container ships stuck on the Port of Long Beach because they couldn't get FDA inspectors onto the ships to wave their hands. And then there weren't enough stevedores to get it off the ships and then get it onto the trucks. It was a real nightmare. And because of that extremely strong relationship with our tuna supplier, I visit him, go to his house. When he's in town, he comes to my house, got to know him really, really well. We were able to corner a section of product when no one's purchase orders were getting filled. And I had some of the biggest full-service restaurant groups around Chicago, Let Us Entertain You, Cooper's Hawk, ringing me up saying, hey, Chris, where are you getting tuna? I'm like, I'm not telling you, and you can't have any. And so that those relationships, those critical relationships for your most important products, the GPO just isn't a replacement for that relationship.
Ed, did you have purchasing group experiences?
I've been in where we actually were the provider of 90% of the materials that were used by our franchisees, over 1,000 of them. So. But I will tell you, if you ask yourself this question, when's the last time you called up one of your suppliers and just had a conversation about anything other than they did something wrong? I mean, building a relationship means you're there, you're with them, and if they're critical to your success, treat them like that. It's that simple.
Questions on anything we just discussed, or go ahead.
Sure. I mean, just to be very fair to OxyFresh, there was bouts with Little Caesars where they would bring in a new, inexperienced buyer, and for 6 months to a year, I was paying more for pepperoni than Domino's, right? So I think that was a situation where they just had an inexperienced buyer for that particular contract of chemicals, as an example, right? I definitely think you bring things in as value add, for sure. At the very least, you should be able to, and I'll just be honest too, I think it's one of their strong profit centers. They make so much more of that because they don't charge a percentage of royalty. They just charge a flat fee for their territories, as an example. So I think their business model is set up that way.
I'll also add in that definitely has been a point of contention for franchisees. Not all franchisees have taken
Yeah, I mean, I'm big into the brand. That's why I'm giving that 6% royalty, right? So I want the consistency of that product. If I were to be a Monday morning quarterback with them, at the very least, what they should do is give options. And I think that's something you heard of the big thing is don't have an exclusive, have a preferred vendor. But I also understand that if you've got a particular brand and particular formula, that you got to use it. So you just got to figure out how can you get it to them at the same cost or less. But mature-wise, I'm a net gain out of that relationship with them, right? So, and every organization should have a simplifier and a multiplier. They're two separate people. We're all entrepreneurs. We all wear both hats, but one of them actually gives you energy and the other one takes away from you. So the good news is you don't necessarily have to have a physical partner, but you have to have that key employee that is the opposite. A simplifier reduces costs, streamlines operations, removes friction, right? A multiplier says, give me what you got, I'm going to go exponentialize it. So in the franchisee world, guess who's the simplifier? You guys, the franchisor. The multipliers are guys like me and Charles. We take your ideas and we go and just put it out throughout the thing like Johnny Appleseed. So you got to make sure that you have that both, and as Charles and I are partners, he's a simplifier and I'm a multiplier, right? So I'm always looking for the next big thing. I'm always looking for the next best A+ location. Charles is always trying to figure out how can we maximize the bottom part of the P&L. I'm always looking how can I maximize the top part of the P&L. Just a different way to look at your business relationship with your franchisees.
Great. So we always emphasize at the Titus Center from day one, franchising is about relationships. And we certainly have heard that here already in supply chain, and we've heard it here in evaluating, should I be a franchisee? Why would I pay 6% for the rest of my life to a franchisor? And you heard Jesse very eloquently explain where he looks for value in a franchise and develops that further through relationship with a franchisor. The relationship also extends into the supply chain issues that we continue to deal with, at least to some level. And you heard Chris talk about his relationship with the tuna guy. So Chris and others as well, I want you to talk to them about how you develop the relationship. Developing relationships with franchisors and franchisees, okay, we're not all very good at that. There are a lot of bad franchisors. And people spend a lot of time talking about, there's a new franchise brand that comes on in America every day of the year. More than one a day, because we're up more than 400 new brands. But we never get beyond people saying, well, we have about 4,000, 4,500 brands in North America. How are we still saying that after 3 or 4 years when we say there's a new one every day if 400 to 500 aren't failing? And we do have failed franchise companies, and oftentimes, and failed franchisees, and oftentimes you go back and look at where did this get off course? Well, it happened already at the expo where you met each other and the relationship was not built on honesty or integrity. This happens all the time. So important to build the relationship in franchising, and yet that's something that doesn't get emphasized enough professionally. I don't know if there's a session here about that, but at least it comes in naturally. So Chris, how'd you get to be friends with the tuna supplier?
Well, we're in a relatively nascent category, and we sell raw food. We're selling sushi-grade fish, and there's really not, there's secret sauces, but it's really the quality of the ingredients that you're selling at this point to your customers, and it's really critically important, both from a food safety standpoint, but also just a taste differentiation standpoint. I mean, in food and franchising, you got to get the food right first before you can scale it. So that quality was really critical to us. So I to some degree inherited the relationship, though it was a little bit of a broken one when I did. We buy from sort of the super premium line of chicken of the sea. It's a special firm called Anova. Again, especially sourcing sustainable, these blockchain technology to trace the fish from when it's caught. It goes from 40 degree water. These are massive 400 to 600 pound animals. It gets caught in 40 degree water, processed on ship, immediately put into deep freeze for some boring parasite destruction reasons, and then follows that supply chain down the line. So For us, it was, this is the product that we want to buy because this is the product that we want to sell to our customers, and I'll put our food next to anybody's, and you can taste the difference. We're also the only poke chain in the U.S. that I'm aware of that makes a no antibiotics claim on their salmon. We buy from the only farm in South America that doesn't use antibiotics because of the frigidity of the water, and they don't overfill the pens. It's down in southern Patagonia, growing region 23A. And so we're just fanatical about the quality of that food. And so maintaining those relationships, because we want to serve that food, but I need to get it at a right price, right? And so leveraging our purchasing power, but also making it clear that our business isn't on the line. I'm not going to hammer this guy every 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, depending upon the buying schedule for cost breaks. They've got to be able to make some money too, and I want them to be able to supply us. So we've been able to get creative and work out arrangements just every time we encounter a problem. Whether most recently it's I need this to be a little less expensive, and managed to work out something mid-contract to help relieve some of the pressure that we and our franchisees were experiencing. And it kind of comes full circle. As franchisor, we take a lot of pride in, I don't know what we get enough credit for, just a really transparent model. We need our initial franchise fee to defray a lot of our costs. We need our royalty, right? And obviously, the marketing spend goes right back into sales activities for the franchisees. We don't mark up supply chain one bit. And I've got a competitor where 20% of their revenue is selling their franchisees sauces. And I know it's common, and it happens. It's not something we do. We're at the stage right now where I want our franchisees happy, making money, and growing locations. I want to be able to tell them what we pay for food in our company stores is exactly what you're going to pay for food. So if you're feeling the pressure, believe me, our company-operated business, which is half of it, is feeling the pressure too. And we're in this together. It really helps create alignment because we're not playing the rebate game. We're not playing the exclusive supplier, but we're getting a kickback every 6 months. We're not keeping any of that. We don't have multiple revenue streams throughout our franchise process. It's real simple. We're the only ones that put a full P&L in our item 19 in the category because, look, we're proud of our numbers. If you're not proud of them, why aren't you putting them in there? So it kind of goes all ways. We want to build the relationships with our franchisees that we're not looking to scratch a nickel out of them every step along the way. Same with our suppliers. We want these guys to be with us long term. We want to be proud to serve the highest quality products. We need to be willing to come up with a price that makes sense for us. And I think we are a pretty big buyer for them, and so we're able to just cultivate it. And to the point John and Ed made, you don't wait until you have a problem to cultivate these relationships. It happens over time. So then when you do have a problem, you can go, hey Jason, I need fish, or we need to find a few cents a pound here. I'm dying in the marketplace right now, and then you can get creative. And so it's just a sustaining thing, but relationships with suppliers, relationships with franchisees, is relationship business. Yeah.
How did you make that work, though, specifically? You got together after business, but people weren't getting together during the pandemic.
So even before the pandemic, if I was ever in California, I'd ring the guy up and say, hey, I'd love to swing by, and then, likewise, whenever he's in town, he would swing by our office, or we'd meet and get a coffee, and then next thing you know, he's coming into town, and we're going out the night before and getting beers. And our salmon supplier is literally 2 miles away from where I live, and in the Chicago suburbs. So drop by their office too, and they send us Christmas gifts, and we do the same thing in return. So it's one of those things where it's just taking the time to think, like, okay, I'm going to be in the proximity. I'd like to meet this vendor that we spend a lot of money with, and that is pretty critical to our chain success. And then it winds up being reciprocal, right? These are sales guys at the end of the day, and they want those. They don't want to wake up and get a surprise. Hey, we're pulling the contract because somebody's 10 cents cheaper, or any nonsense like that. So it's just taking time to realize when you have those opportunities to take them.
Were you the largest customer, top 5 largest customer to this vendor? Or why did they care about you so much?
So we are. I don't know where we rank in terms of our purchasing. They serve a lot of full service restaurants, where this is a menu item and not necessarily the core item, where 90% of what we sell is inclusive of this protein. And so I would think that we probably are the biggest buyer of their, it's a whole loin of tuna that we're buying from them, because that's something that, they serve smaller stuff, pre-cut options that are more amenable to a full-service restaurant where you're pulling to order, right? As a menu item. So I think because of the quality, that's sort of where their big customer base has lay. And I don't know that any of my competitors. I think one of my competitors used to use them, but none of them do anymore because they've turned into just pure cost buyers during the pandemic. But I also know they're not passing those cost savings onto their franchisees, and I don't think they're passing the best quality product onto their customers. And so it's just not something we've ever considered.
Ed, you got a relationship story?
I've been married for 40 years.
Yeah.
There's so many, and I will tell you that what's difficult, and I've been where you're sitting right now as an emerging franchisor. I mean, you don't have the clout that you like to have down the road. So it is literally because of relationships. But I'll tell you, I say this all the time. The franchisees never know when they're going to need the franchisor. And the franchisor never knows when he's going to need or she's going to need the franchisees. And that's the honest conversation I have with people all the time. I mean, we had 60 units under construction through one financial lender, and the Fed seized that financial lender and turned off the spigot, and we had, bills coming in, millions, and we had no way of paying them. We were relatively small. And so the franchisee said, well, why don't you just come to us and borrow the money? And we did, and then we paid him back. But then there's a time where an operator is really in trouble. Nothing that they did wrong. Franchisees watch what you do as the leadership role as a franchisor. They watch how you treat rogue franchise operators. They watch how you treat the winning franchise. They watch how you treat everybody. And in my mind, there's nothing you should ever hide from a franchisee. I challenge anybody in this room right now to tell me what's one thing you feel should be hidden from a franchisee. And I bet you none of you can come up with one. But yet, we tend to hold our cards to the vest, and then you expect people to get to know you and have a relationship with you being silent and keeping things from them. So relationships with you cannot say franchisee relationship too many times. I'm sure that's unified up here. And by the way, I wanted to compliment Chris. What he just did in that 3 minutes is he showed how he has his vision, his values, and his brand positioning all aligned together. And I was very impressed with that. And he said it very quickly. And he didn't say it exactly that way, but that's something you should take home with you.
Jesse, Steve, you got relationship stories?
Real quick one. Share with you a mistake, and don't allow supplier. If you have more than one supplier for a particular type of thing, set it up to where that they remain competitors, and I like that preferred label that I heard at one other of the meetings today, because if they start collaborating, they start colluding, and then it becomes a cartel, and you got a big problem. So I would suggest if you have multiple vendors, keep that in sort of a preferred way, but you can't allow the colluding, because that will decrease the quality, the efficiency, the expediency, and everything good about what that relationship should be with the franchisee.
Clearly based on my first opening statements, I'm in the relationship business. So as just a quick example, first round of PPP funding was the only round that I really needed. And we had a great relationship with our banker to the point where we were number 2 keyed into the kiosk for the PPP loan, and we got approved right away. The only reason we weren't number 1 is someone else owed them more money than us, right? But I had a lot of friends that were using recommended apple pie as an example, came up short. Applications never even got submitted before the deadline. So relationships are super important. They always are, and they always have been.
Very good. I know we're a little bit over, but there's another question here to consider. So what are you telling the new franchisee about the supply chain story today? How important is that? Franchisees generally don't even know what supply chain is initially. So what do you tell? Chris, start over here.
I mean, like I opened with, we kind of include this and access to technology. If you're an emerging chain, it's not the huge marketing machine that some of the bigger guys are, even if there's access to a system. So this is something where even during the recruitment process, it's yeah, we got this locked down. You know, we got it locked down for a lot of reasons. You know, we want to pass on cost savings. We want to provide the right quality. We don't want our franchisees going to the supermarket to buy fish that you're going to serve raw. I mean, it just can't happen. So it's something where this is something we do for you. This is part of the royalty. It's part of the value prop of being a franchisee. You know, the support isn't just training and on site. It's a lot of the silent work behind the scenes too, to make sure that franchisees just don't have to worry about it. So it's mission critical to us. It's something we talk about a lot. If we have an issue, we get out in front of it well in advance with our franchisees and suppliers. And you know, knock on wood, so far we've been pretty able to be pretty nimble and adapt and have some foresight on some stuff. And so I think our franchisees during validation are saying, hey, I think they're telling our candidates these guys are good. They walk the walk, and it's not something I have to worry about, like my other concept where I had to go out and find A, B, C, D, and E vendor and then get them approved by the brand before I could even open. So we want this to be as white glove and turnkey as possible for our franchisees, especially at this early stage. I don't know if it looks the same at 1,000 stores, but until we get there, we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
John, there's something I can't believe we've overlooked here. All these suppliers live and die on selling things. I mean, that's how they're making their business. They're focused on the commodities market and what's going on in so many different areas that affect their business. Take the time and ask them questions about what do you see down the road? Where are you having your shortages? Where should we be expecting shortages to be hitting us? They're living that every day. We're thinking of it like maybe twice a day. They're living it every second.
Yeah.
So get with them and find out. They have buyers. They have people that are analysts. They're following this stuff real closely.
Telling new franchisees, what are you fellas doing?
My advice when you have a brand new franchisee come into your system, this is probably a first-time business owner, brand new brand in a new market. Help them tell their story. Help them figure out what their story is, because they're going to have to hire a lot of people quick. They don't have experience with it. That same story applies to them going and getting a loan with the bank. So just help them come up with their story that they can tell.
My biggest advice would be to assign, we call them business coaches, assign a coach to a franchisee the moment they sign the franchise agreement, prior to orientation, and that will help everything.
Okay, they've got another session coming in 5 minutes, but questions that we didn't get to that you came here to get answered. Anybody? Go ahead.
With the suppliers you deal with on the food purchasing side, are you successfully tying any of these indices or the block foods market we've always tied to, but on the produce side, because the prices fluctuate so much, what are you able to connect to that the food suppliers are willing to tie into to at least have it tied to something other than your prices going up 20%?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things. One is just the sort of the cadence of purchasing, and so if you see a temporary blip, the war in Ukraine is one, right? Where all of a sudden sunflower oil and wheat futures went through the roof, right? And so you want to be in contact with your purchasers and kind of get ahead of it and collaborate and say, hey, let's not lock in prices for a year right now. Let's lock in prices for 3 months and wager that these are going to go down, right? And so it's futures, it's gambling, right? So it's just trying to get the smartest strategy on it, not letting things happen to you, but to get ahead with some of those cadences. And then secondarily, our brand specifically, we're not on any margin schedule with our mainliner. We're just on a flat case for a variety of reasons, but it's been airtight and really beneficial, because if your mainliner's taking 8-9% of everything they're delivering, but that cost has doubled in the past 2 years, then all of a sudden, guess what? Your landed cost for the supplier markup is now double what it was before as well. And so trying to find the right schedule where you're looking at a margin schedule or per case schedule, sometimes it's split. So the sort of the basis of the agreement could be there too. But the main two big group purchasing organizations I'm familiar with have auditors in place, and so what they'll do is make sure first of all that you're aware of increases coming in, because they're pretty upstream, right? When restaurant packaging went through the roof because of COVID, obviously, because everybody who used to serve customers in stores now is trying to serve people off premise, and obviously styrofoam has been slowly going away for some time in some regions, and so the price of resin went through the roof along with paper pulp, right? And so it sometimes takes a second for that stuff to catch up with the actual products on hand. And so, but the auditing metric is pretty cool because it's just something that's automatic, happens behind the scenes. All these mainliner contracts have typically an audit right in them, right? And so not having to worry about that, having that outsourced and just running behind the scenes to know, okay, and it's unusual for stuff to happen, but it happens, where, hey, we identified X, Y, and Z, hey, we're, over the threshold of 1% on this item. So they're pretty good with it, but it's really looking at the purchasing brains, that they're working directly with the suppliers on, both way upstream, but then also through the supply chain until it hits your door. So I don't know if that's specific enough, but it's been a really, really positive experience in our case.
I want to thank panelists and thank the audience. If you're going to hear Mary Thomas Kennedy, which I'm sure you want to, that's at 11:50. That's coming up next. If you find yourself headed to South Florida, come to West Palm Beach. Happy to host you at the Titus Center at Palm Beach Atlantic University. Come and visit our students, share your information with them, and appreciate you being here today. God bless you all.